right, welcome to Primos for Life, the wrestling podcast made for the fans, by the fans. Como siempre, yo soy Eddie, el niño vaque. We got Ariel, the Ecuadorian dream bisueta, and we are your self-proclaimed, undisputed co-host tag team champions of the world. And in tonight's episode, Ariel and I sit down with a very special guest, indie wrestling legend Steve Monsta Mack. We talk about his journey from Brooklyn to the bright lights of Ring of Honor and the legacy of the Hit Squad, the evolution of the independent scene, and so much more. So, como siempre, sit back, grab a snack, and let's get it on. Primo, what's up?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Todo bien, man. Like always. I'm always excited to connect and just talk wrestling with my primo. You know what I'm saying?
That's right, man. This is part of the joy that is our day. Sometimes is that we get the tape and just chat and blather on for a little bit about all the good and the bad in wrestling, and it's fantastic and fun. And I'm glad that we get to do it yet again today, my man.
Absolutely. And today's episode is extra special. And actually, Primo, I want you to have the honors to tell our devoted listeners why this episode is so special.
Okay. Well, Eddie is right. We do have a special episode today because today we are doing an interview with a wrestling veteran of almost 30 years in this industry. A multi-time champion, not just 2 or 3. We're talking handfuls and handfuls of championships. An independent star. He's been to Ring of Honor. He's been to major promotions. I would like to introduce to our listeners, Steven Monsta Mack.
Yeah, there he is.
What's going on?
Hey, how you doing, sir?
I'm great. And yourselves?
Good, man. Good. Just, we super excited to jump in, just hear your story, hear your journey, just ready to listen and get crazy.
Same. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's always fun when we get to have somebody on, and especially somebody who's been around the industry with the longevity in which you have. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. So to be able to sit down and pick your brain and talk to you as wrestling fans, I mean, because that's exactly what we are. This is something that I've grown up with. You and I are the same age, and so I've grown up with it the way you have, just loving it. It's just fantastic. So thank you very much for taking a little bit of time and spending it with us, and just kind of gracing us with your knowledge and all the wonderful things that we get to learn today.
Thank you for inviting me on. And I love to talk, so I kind of been around the podcasting game pretty much since the beginning. So like, this is something that I enjoy doing and I love doing with everybody. There's nobody that I haven't talked to that I've ever been like, oh, that kind of sucked. I've had a great experience with everyone I've talked to. So I look forward to this as well. I'm ready when you guys are.
Yeah.
Hopefully we are on key with everybody else. We don't want to be the exception to this rule right now. So fingers crossed.
I can't see that happening.
No, I definitely second that motion. But Monsta Mack, man, truly a pleasure to have you on with us. And obviously, we're going to jump into some of these questions that we have for you. And we'll definitely have some time at the end to give you an opportunity to let the people know where to find you, where to look for you, where to look at for matches, promotions, etc. So we'll definitely give you that time to share with the world. But I'm really excited to ask you the first question, right? Because it's sort of become our staple question. We do a lot of interviews with some pros, but then we also have some fan interviews that we try to bring in. And it really started with our conversation, Ariel and I's first couple of episodes, our conversations about what is that burning first memory of wrestling that like you close your eyes and you can never like unsee it again, right? And if you heard any of the previous episodes, for me, and I'll do it for our listeners, it was 97, Bad Blood in your house, Taker versus Shawn Michaels, the debut of Kane, and of course, Vince McMahon and JR just in my ears, just screaming, "It's gotta be Kane!" That's just, eyes open, closed. I can never unsee that, and just horrifying on how Kane just made his debut, right? Because that's just burned into my brain. So based on that information,
Well, hang on. Let me now, Monster, if I may,
Mm-hmm.
the way we also usually tend to pose the question is a little different because Eddie's memory is more so of a specific moment in time. The way I like to generally phrase the question is there a specific moment? Is there, what about the first memory that you have of saying you love wrestling was it? Like Eddie said, it's this particular moment, where Kane came down and JR was just losing his mind. I said it was when I would be with my grandfather and we'd be watching Lucha Libre on the Spanish channel when I was a kid, just sitting on his lap. And that's when I fell in love with it. So, in tidying up, is there a specific moment? Is there a memory? Because that's my thing. My thing is that memory of just sitting on his lap and watching, and then anytime wrestling was on, I ran to it. So is there a specific match, a specific moment? I think is kind of where we want to lead.
exactly.
So for me, growing up, my uncle was in the Coast Guard, and I lived in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. He lived on Fort Hamilton. So that's where my cousin and I, my cousin being low key, his father was my mother's brother. We grew up a wrestling family. But for me, I don't remember anything before the age of about 5 or 6 watching wrestling. And my earliest memory where I was like, oh, I'm hooked is when my uncle had rented Rocky 4 for my cousin and I to watch, and he showed us some, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, and it was a highlight of Hogan beating the Sheik for the title, right? And
Yes.
so, like, for us, that was like the coolest thing. It was like, oh my God, this is so amazing. But then, so as big as that moment was, the even bigger standout moment was when I had the chicken pox, probably about half a year later. I was home and my mom, she let us rent whatever we wanted. So we rented the very first Predator movie along with WrestleMania 1. And with
What a double
WrestleMania
feature.
1,
What a double feature.
exactly, exactly. So watching Mr. T, because I was a big A-Team fan, and everybody who was on that lineup, like, it was just amazing to see. And one of my favorite parts of watching that was questioning the fact that King Kong Bundy took about a minute, and they were like, "It's 7 seconds." I was like, "No, it's not
No.
7 seconds. That was like a minute and a half." But it was, I mean, from that point on, literally everything was about getting magazines, getting, my hands on whatever footage. I had a neighbor who had a hot box, so like the very first WCW pay-per-views, NWA pay-per-views, he would record them and let me watch. So, like I was
Nice.
getting NWA, I was getting WCW, I mean WWE, I was getting Puerto Rico because like you said, I think was it Univision that had
Univision. Yeah, it was
yeah,
Univision.
it had WWC, Carlos Colon. His company would show a lot. Also, WWE would show, but was that? I think that was on Telemundo, or was it the same channel? Was it?
But that was not 100% sure, to be honest with you.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
think it
that
was.
was 40 years ago, so
Yeah,
you know.
well,
Uh,
exactly. Yeah, I was.
I remember hearing the crowd chant "foi" every time the babyface would make a hit, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, that's so cool!" And like actually, when Moff and I started teaming up, that was one of the first memories that we shared was listening to the Puerto Rican crowd and their excitement whenever the babyface would come back and make just go crazy. We like all of my friends, we all have similar memories because we're all around the same age, but I do remember clearly also, which is one of the last things that really, really hooked me. My grandfather, he lived on Park Avenue in Brooklyn. I always joke with Homicide that I'm just as hood as you. I just didn't spend as much time. But
There you go.
he had on, it was when, was it UWF, I believe, when Colonel De Beers attacked Jimmy Snuka and left him bloodied. And I mean, when I say bloody, he gave him the pedigree on the floor, pile drivers.
Just
It was
crimson
insane. And I was
crimson
just like,
mask. Yeah.
yes. I mean, his face exploded. And I was just like, oh my God, Jimmy Snuka's dead. And, but But it also showed me like there was stuff outside of the other stuff that I was watching. There was the independents. I had
Right.
those three specific memories of like, getting me into wrestling, making me fall in love with wrestling, and making me want to know everything about wrestling. And it
Right.
went on from there.
I mean,
Wow,
that's great.
man.
That's great. I mean, to just recall, three moments like that on the top of your head. Well, not on the top of your head, because I'm sure you've been asked that question before. But I mean, is absolutely like just wonderful to hear. So I guess kind of where I want to move is, like I said, you've been in the industry for almost 30 years. You're going
hmm
on maybe I want to say 20, 26, 27,
I
if
just
I know
started
correctly.
year 28 in
So
February.
Wow.
28.
Mhm.
We just congratulations, man. The longevity.
Thank you.
Just kudos
Congrats.
to
Thank you.
you and keeping your mind and your body right, and being able to do this for as long as you have. So we covered, like you said, a few in terms of why you fell in love and things. What was the moment that you knew, especially coming from a wrestling family, that
Right.
this is what you wanted to do, and not just because you were from a wrestling family and maybe you felt like this was just your path naturally, but was there a moment when you're like, oh no, this is like it's clicked, like I'm here and this is what it's about?
So when I say wrestling family, I kind of meant that my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunts, my uncles, my mom's aunt and uncles, they all loved wrestling. So
Yeah. Hmm.
to have people who loved it as much, it's going to carry on from generation to generation. My uncle, he was the one that really, and my grandfather as well, my mom's father, he got me, the two of them got me into wrestling heavy. It wasn't until, and, so when I say that I've been in the business for 28 years, technically it's a little bit of a lie because like the road started February of 97. Me and Key went to St. John's Church in Brooklyn. Low Life Louie told us about this place that they rented out rings to guys, and you didn't have to have any, training. You just go, and they taped it for public access. So we became like public access stars off of that. But
Yeah.
96, we had in Brooklyn, they had this annual parade in October. And so my mom comes home on a Sunday and she was there and she was like, they have a wrestling ring set up. So I called Loki. I was like, oh my God, we got to go. They have a wrestling ring. He got there as fast. I mean, I think he ran to my house. You know what I mean? And we ran up the block. It was about 3 blocks away. And we were able to check out the ring. And there was a guy there. His name was Mike. His gimmick name was Bodyguard for Hire. And he
Oh,
is
that's a long one. All right.
yeah, I mean, but his son ended up being Mike Cruel, who on the early 2000s indies was all over the place with us, and he ended up in the WWE for a short stint.
Oh wow.
But he was probably about 14, 13, give or take, and he had a younger brother, and there was no wrestling going on. We were like curious. We are like, oh, is there a way we could get in the ring? 16-year-olds, you're trying to, 17-year-olds, you're
Yeah.
trying to
Right.
figure out whatever it is you could do to sneak your way in. And
Right.
Bodyguard tells us, he's like, because we told them, we were like, oh, we just started training a couple of months ago. We were still new, but is there a way maybe we could get in the ring and get a little bit of running around, blah, blah, blah. And Mike's like, yeah, sure. Where are you guys training at? And we were the only place we could think of. Yeah, we train at Johnny Rod's. Never been there. But we were like, yeah, we're Johnny Rod's kids. Oh, okay.
Checks out.
Johnny's a good guy.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Johnny's a good guy. He's like, go ahead, go get some gear. And, we ran back to my, I just literally that week before finished playing football for Fort Hamilton High School. And, so like I still had like my knee pads and my tights and stuff. We ran to my house, got sweats, sneakers, shirt, whatever gear I had for football, changed, came right back. He was like, all right, guys, you guys got 5 minutes. So we get in there. Now, me and Key, we used to get in
Right.
trouble all the time. We would wrestle in the apartment. We'd lay the mattresses out. We'd do all kinds of crazy stuff. We were watching
Of course.
Rey
Yeah.
Mysterio, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero. You know what I mean? And we were like mesmerized by these guys. And so we were like, all right, well, we're going to do whatever we practice at home, try not to get killed, whatever. So we have this match, and literally within a minute, it's probably about 5,000 people surrounding us because it was a street fair.
Wow.
And it was all people we knew,
What?
all people that we went to school with. Yeah, it was insane. It was insane.
Wow.
So we get to the point where we're trying out the stuff that we always like. I was doing a power bomb, and he was doing the cartwheel kick already because he loved Muda and I love Vader. We were just doing the stuff that we loved. We get
Right.
to a point where now we have everybody hooked. They're all cheering. Loki gets up on the top rope. He's going for a moonsault. And when he goes for the moonsault, he kicks his street light above him.
Oh,
So everyone
Oh,
loses their mind. Yeah, it was insane. Everyone loses their mind. And we both were smart enough at that moment. We were like, we're not going to get them any hotter. Pin me. One, two, three.
and
But
and
as
and
yeah, exactly. And as we're getting to three, the crowd is going nuts. They're counting with us. And that was it. I was hooked. There was never any way that I was never going to at
wow.
least try to be a pro wrestler forever. And from that point on, it just things worked
Wow.
out the way that they did. And that was it.
oh
That's
my
incredible. Wow, what a story, man. That's incredible. Holy man, I'm just no words. That's
yeah.
incredible. That's a moment. That's how you know.
Yeah,
We were
because like
hooked.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, the fact that you guys had this crowd so early on, and you knew like how to call the match at that point, it's like that is like bananas. Like, how is that not a like a tall tale sign of like, hey, I'm a natural at this. We're gonna go. Wow, like that is wild.
Well,
That
so
is so
like
Yeah.
cool.
he was
Yeah.
always an amazing athlete. I mean, I'm not bad myself, but like due to my size, I'm not going to be as flexible and bendy as Key. But I'm always trying to keep up. We
Right.
we had that natural brotherly rivalry where he was always doing something, I would do something. We would go out in the morning and ride bikes at like 6 in the morning, come back at 6 to watch TBS wrestling, and go back out once wrestling was over. And like that was the thing, like we were always keeping active. And like I said, I was always trying to keep up with him because he was so good. And it fit natural, and because of that I was able to hang. And we just always had that natural chemistry, obviously being related, and just loving wrestling the way that we did. Like I said, literally everything we could get our hands on for wrestling, whether it's magazines, videotapes, whatever. Before the internet, you had to dig and dig and dig. And that's what we did. We knew about Stampede Wrestling. We knew about British wrestling. We knew about Japanese wrestling. And then WCW really exposed a lot of that international flavor for us. So
Yeah.
we kept
Right.
up with it. And then, he started going away from WWE wrestling a little bit, faster than, I did. I always kind of stuck with it. Really, with Bret Hart and that whole situation happening, that kept me in. I was like, man, I'm hooked. You know what I mean?
Right.
But we always kept our mind in the business. And I guess because we were always so into it, we would wrestle in the apartment, in his apartment, right? His mom was working a couple blocks away. The neighbors downstairs would complain, oh, they're wrestling again. It's all, they're smashing the ceiling. She'd come home, whip our asses with the belt, and then she'd leave, and we'd still go back to wrestling. You know what I mean? It was like, it was in us.
That's love. That's dedication right there. That's what it is. You take the whooping
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, she's gone. Let's go again.
She's God.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, now, Monster, I got a question for you, right?
Hmm.
Because you mentioned Brooklyn, and shout outs to Brooklyn, because even though I'm in Florida now, I was born and raised in Brooklyn. So, shout outs to Bensonhurst, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
growing up in Brooklyn, right? How did that environment and upbringing, right? Because you got, you from New York, you got a little, swag in your step, you got a little attitude, you know what I mean? Like, how did that shape your like in ring style and attitude, and your persona going into the ring? Like, how did you know where to go when creating this character or going forward with that?
So, the name Monster Mac, I mean, if you're a fan of hip hop or Beavis and Butthead, Beavis and Butthead had an album of music, compilation album. And the day that we were going to go join Low Life Louie, he already had his name. He already knew he's like Blackstreet. Have Dr. Dre says something about low key, whatever. It's like,
Right,
that's
right,
me,
right.
right? All right, that makes sense. You're quiet, whatever. For me, we couldn't find a name at all. It was like 20 different names. So he looks at the CD and he's like, this is you, Monster Mac. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're a big guy. And even then, I was still probably like about 220, 230, because I was working out all the time playing football. He was like, but
Right.
you're a big guy. and you're always hanging out with all the girls. Every time I see you, you got girls everywhere you talk to. You're not afraid to talk to girls. Monsta Mack fits.
Yeah.
It stuck. I kind of hated the name. I'll be honest with you. I hated Monsta because everybody spelled it.
Oh,
But listen. They spelled it wrong every single time. Monster or Mac or
yeah.
Mak. Always spelling it wrong. So it was always like,
God.
but it was a pain for a while, but you get used to it after a while. And then um so growing up where we did, I mean, Bay Ridge is not a tough neighborhood back in the 80s and 90s. You know what I mean? It's, mostly Italians, Greeks.
Yeah.
Um, there was very little thugs, Hispanics, and Bensonhurst, I'd hang out there a lot of Italian guys, I'm cool with Italian girls, I'm cool with whatever. And, so like it was just, it really, as far as being Latino, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, it really didn't influence that in me. And
Hmm.
because of that, I think that's why sometimes people they're surprised because when I tell them I'm from Brooklyn, I don't have an accent. I don't really have too much of a Brooklyn style when I talk. I could talk like this, but it wouldn't really fit me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what I grew up with,
I hear
though.
this guy from my job in my head right now. I hear him. I hear the guy at work right now. He's
That's
you.
awesome.
That was perfect. Nailed it. Nailed it.
but but that's what I grew up with, and I don't talk like that. I don't speak like that, and so like as we were going on, we meet Homicide, and Homicide takes us under his wing, and we have another guy named Lathon, who he was a wrestler for a long time, and then kind of when the doghouse closed, that's when he left wrestling. But Lathon was awesome. He was 6'8". He could wrestle like Amazing Red. Actually, there was many times where I saw him and Amazing
Wow.
Red get into matches in training, and Lathon could hang. So as we were going on with them, more of the New York attitude started getting instilled in us because we were seeing that as we were traveling, we'd go to just over the bridge into Jersey, and the Jersey cliques, they didn't want us around at all. They were very protective of their spots. And everywhere
Right.
we went, whether it's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, oh, that's the New York guys, the New York clique. So at that point, because there was no real,
Right.
we came around, and we'll get into it, I'm sure, but we came around, we changed a lot of things for independence in this area. And because we did that, they started to get worried. And so now here we are. We come strong, young, hungry guys who just want to work. And we have to fight and kick and claw and scratch because these guys don't want to give us a chance. They start telling people, oh, they sell guns and drugs out of their bags.
Right.
I didn't shoot a gun until I was in my 30s for the first time. You know what I mean? And I was at a range. So, and I've never done drugs. I don't drink. I don't smoke. Like, I'm not straight edge, but like, I don't do any of that stuff. But it was
Right.
really just those type of people and being in that environment because the indies was very much it was open, but at the same time it was like you had to fight for a spot. So that's where like that really influenced us, being from New York, being from Brooklyn, hanging out with guys from Alphabet City, hanging out with guys from Bensonhurst, hanging out with guys from the projects and Fort Greene and Harlem, being able to experience all that flavor and just as we started to go around and travel with each other, we picked up little things from each other. And as we traveled all over, that's where people were like, that's where everybody was starting to like, oh, these are the New York guys. You could tell because of how they act or whatever. So I guess that's kind of, to answer your question, that's kind of where it came from. Just being around other New Yorkers is more of what influenced us rather than just being from Bay Ridge.
Wow.
Well, I mean that you answered kind of the question perfectly for where I was about to lead to, because I mean, the hit squad. You mentioned before, Dan Raff, your partner in the hit squad. I mean, you made major impacts in Jersey All Pro Wrestling, in the independent, in Ring of Honor. So you say that the part of the drive, now I understand, part of that drive came from you being the outsiders coming in and wanting to just show everybody, no, like, we're here to work, we're here to take this, like, we're hungry, we want it, like, and we're not any kind of way about it. We're gonna outwork you, and that's how we're gonna be better. Outside of that work ethic, what do you think helped make you and Dan so successful as a tag team that you were able to make the impact that you did in your federations?
I was actually just talking about this the other day. Moff and uh, I had met. I don't want to say met. I had seen Moff at a Jersey All Pro show before he got into the school. Whatever. He was a fan that used to come around. There was a group that Homicide and I were a part of called the Nation of Immigration, and it was all Hispanic guys, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And Moff would be the guy front row, Boricua! And we were like, yo, this maniac, he's down to kill anybody for us, right? So one day he shows up at the school, and Homicide and Fat Frank, who's the owner of Jersey All Pro, they see him, and they're like, "Oh, we got to put him and Steve together because we looked a lot alike." And so if you watch early Hit Squad matches, you'll see that when it's far away, even I have a hard time telling who is who. You know what I mean? Moff and I, at the beginning, the chemistry was a little off because I didn't want to, I was doing a singles run. Key and I were traveling all over Pennsylvania, Michigan, and all over the United States. So I was like, man, I'm a star. I don't want to have to redo this and restart this tag team thing. But then, I was like, you know what? He's a big dude. If I've seen a couple of times where we almost get into fights because people are kind of jealous. I was like, well, I'd rather have him on my side. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna make this work. We're gonna make this work. And Moff is he's a natural athlete as well, and he's a little bit older than me. So I kind of looked up to him after a couple of months because again he's older. He's I'm 20 at the time, and he's about 25, 26. So it's like I'm learning how to do things not only as a wrestler, but as a human man. You know what I mean? Learning from him, watching from him, we were able to talk a lot and we just had natural chemistry. Um,
Nice.
I've said it before a bunch of times. Moff and I could go maybe 30, 40 years never talking, and they tell us we're booked for a match, and it'll be as if we never stopped talking.
Wow.
I mean, that's happened a couple of times where a couple of times for a couple of years we're not talking. I'll hit him up. Hey, you want to wrestle these guys? They keep asking us or asking me. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then it's as if nothing ever changed.
Wow.
And he had the same drive that I did. There was the whole being the underdog, if you will, not highly thought of as being able to do. And he always wanted to shut people up. That was the same motivation Homicide, Key, and myself had. It was you think we can't? We're gonna shut you up and we're gonna prove you wrong. And that's always been, the chip on our shoulder to keep it going. And he still has it. I talked to him, earlier this year. He still has it. You know what I mean? Like he still has that chip that he has to prove everybody, just like I do. Even though now, my body's a little bit more beat up, banged up, whatever. But like we all have that. Homicide had to announce his retirement. He didn't want to retire. You know what I mean? But he still has that fight. I talk to him all the time. It's like I'm angry. I want to, I want to kick someone's butt. You know what I mean? But it just that's how it is. You know what I mean? We're all that way. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
yeah, we just have some insanely, natural chemistry that we could never explain. It really is as if we were, bloodline from somewhere. We just don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Wow.
That's perfect. That's great.
Yeah. Well, okay. So now I have a question, right?
Hmm.
Because in our research, we found out that you were part of Ring of Honor's first ever match, right?
Hmm.
And when I read that and I said that out loud, I was like, "What was that moment like for you?" Right? And then also, did you even have any idea that Ring of Honor was like anything special or like what it would become, right? Because it's known now, right? So like, did any of that just like cross your mind at that point?
So, the founders of Ring of Honor, Rob Feinstein, Doug Gentry, and then there was Gabe. I had known Rob and Doug from ECW days,
Mm.
and they used to come film all the shows that we were doing at the time, whether it was JP, USA Pro, ICW. They saw the Hit Squad, Low Key, and Homicide all the time. Amazing Red, SAT as well. And the reason why we were all a part of that first show was because they saw how we were changing the game for the indies. The real story is Low Key discovering All Japan Pro Wrestling. Because Low Key discovers we love New Japan. We were all about New Japan, Great Muta, Masachono, Chono, Vader, Inoki, and he discovers All Japan and discovers Misawa, Kobashi, Kawada, Taue, and when he discovers that, he puts me onto it, and then we start talking to Homicide about it. And when we start talking to Homicide, our practice style it changed totally different. So we started practicing more of a strong style match when we're practicing, and we were doing that on the indies, along with the part that Moff and I were being super creative. We were doing moves with the SAT, with the Briscoe brothers, very young Briscoe brothers, Dixie and Dragon and JP, who would become Special K with Deranged. All the young guys we were all working with. And I say young guys, I was a young guy too, but like if we were 20, 21, they were 18, 16, 17, somewhere around there, right? So we were all working hard and we were changing the games. They see this and they were like, oh, since ECW died, we kind of want to establish a place where if ECW kept going, who would be the guys and who would be the spotlight on that ECW roster for the new guys. So I kind of knew already the vision. So when they approached us, I always joke with the SAT. It's like, who was it that Feinstein, and Doug went up to first to sign contracts? But who was it that he approached to first for Ring of Honor? And I'm pretty sure it was the SAT by like a couple of days. But then he came to JP that week and he talked to Homicide, me and Moff. So it could have been either which one. But when he told us and Doug told us, because Doug, we were really cool with, he was the heart of that Ring of Honor, office in the beginning. And when Doug told us what he wanted, what his vision was, it was like, this is going to catch on. When they announced Christopher Daniels and American Dragon, it was like, yeah, definitely. You know what I mean? So going into it, we knew that there was going to be people there. We knew that they had a big tape trading following, and our names were carrying weight. Like, it was crazy back then. Again, there was no real heavy internet. There was no YouTube, no Daily Motion, any of that. And I would go to a Great Adventure with my ex-wife, and people would be like, "Hey, Squad!" I'd be like, "How the hell they know?" You know what I mean? And she would say it too. She's like, this is so annoying. Everywhere we go, people know you. I'm like, it's not my fault.
Sorry, I'm good at my job. So that's on me. That's
Yeah.
on me.
I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know how they're watching us. You know what I mean? But she used to joke. Actually, Mafia used to say the same thing. We could drive to Samoa, and Samoans would be like, "Hit Squad." You know what I mean? But so then they tell us that they want us to be the first match, and it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't technically a match. It wasn't announced, but it was going to end up being a match. And it was with our friends, the Christopher Street Connection, who we were with all over New York, New Jersey. And I love them. Those two guys, the one of them, Ace, I was, going back to the fifth grade. He was in the sixth grade. And Buffy, I met my first day starting with Low Life Louie. You know what I mean? So I have heavy, deep roots with those two guys. And the fact that, I got to see them, work with them, and watch them go to Japan themselves and become huge stars themselves, for me, I'm always proud. And I'm always talking to both of them, trying to get them to come back for one more match. But, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But, I'm always proud of those two and what they did. And we knew that Ring of Honor wanted us to set the mission statement and that was going to be an important piece of their history. Talking to Gabe Sapolsky, he let me know and Moff know how important he wanted that to be for him, because that's what set Ring of Honor apart from everybody. It was going to be about the wrestling, the competitive part of wrestling. There's going to be storylines, but it wasn't going to be like very obvious storylines. You know what I mean? So like, it was very important for us. But I could tell you this right now, even with knowing all that, Christopher Street comes out, they do their thing, our cue hits, and we're behind the curtain watching. And I go out first, I take a step through the curtain, and as I do, and I'm all my years, no matter what, I've never been nervous before a match. I've always been calm. It's some weird thing. I feel like I'm an alien because I don't get nervous. But as we step through the curtain, because the crowd knows that something's going to happen, it's as if everybody was in front of the curtain and just stood right there in front of us. And I stopped for a second because it's funny. I'm a pro wrestler. I don't really like people that much. Little secret about me, right? So
Awesome.
I stepped through the curtain and it felt like everybody just was right there. And it was a moment of anxiety, but at the same time, excitement because the whole
Yeah.
place changed. Moff and I ran through, and before we even did anything, they were chanting Hit Squad. And I was like, man, this is so cool that I'm doing this with my boys and this crowd that I don't know. There's people from Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, everywhere. And they came to watch Ring of Honor and they're chanting our name. And we're just starting the thing off. You know what I mean? So I was already like so geeked out. I was like, oh, this is so amazing. Once I felt that, I was like, this is going to be different. Everything just changed, and legit, it really did for Ring of Honor.
Oof.
That's
Wow. That's
unbelievable, man. That's
amazing,
crazy.
man.
Now, now, Mac, you mentioned before, especially coming from New York, that you felt you had to work extra hard, in terms of trying to get your spot and things like that. And you also mentioned, of course, and part of why Eddie loved doing what we do, and we are Primos for life, is we celebrating our Ecuadorian culture, and you being a Boricua, I know you celebrate yours as well. So
Hmm.
on top of being from New York, as a Latino wrestler, were there any, I'm sure there were additional, obstacles that were put in your way, and outside of just sheer will, what do you think helped overcome some of those obstacles, and how big were some of those hurdles?
Some of those hurdles were massive, honestly. And it's not until I sit back and I thought about what we did and what we overcame, that I realized how huge those hurdles were. Because when you're in the moment, you're just blasting through. And then every once in a while you get a something that'll make you sit and think like, wow, I can't believe that really happened. You know what I mean? I talked to Santana and Ortiz a lot, because th- they were the next generation of New York talent. Moff and I passed the torch to them proudly. We were supposed to go down to TNA and do some stuff with LAX. We couldn't. We were gladly able to, let them know, hey, let Santana Ortiz take the spot because they're hungry. They're from New York. They're both Hispanic. That's, you know what I mean? Whatever you saw in us, we see in them. And there was never any like issue of like that because we were happy that Latinos from New York were definitely in that spot, you know,
Yeah, for sure.
and they held up their ends for as long as they could. You know what I mean? Wrestling is a tough business, and it's very taxing on the brain, very taxing on the body, and you can get swallowed up real fast. But these two guys held on in two different companies, major promotions, and they did their thing. You know what I mean? Um,
Hmm.
as far as like being a Latino in this business, overcoming hurdles, the best thing that I could do was teaching the younger guys under me how to take what you are and be the example for the generation under you. I never, listen, I'm not going to sit there and say that I didn't argue with people because I got into arguments plenty of times. I got fired from Ring of Honor because I argued with Gabe. You know what I mean? And I try to learn from my mistakes. Nobody's perfect, but at the same time, I try to teach these guys like these are the mistakes I made. Try to avoid them because you're always going to have a microscope under you when you're not what the status quo is. You know, and I don't honestly. I talk to a lot of guys. I never like to be the one to throw out, "Oh, this happened because I'm not white," or "This happened because I'm not black," or "This happened because I don't care about that. I see past all that."
Right.
When I was running things for Jersey All Pro, I hired black, white, yellow, purple, whatever, straight,
Yeah.
gay, trans. I hired everybody and gave everybody a chance because, my mom, she always used to tell me, one day you're going to be, when I'm gone, you're going to say, my mom was the coolest. But I always try to like, say it while she's still alive. So that way I can be like, look, I said it, lady, you know. But my mom really was the coolest. My mom was
Yeah,
very much
that's
heavy
right.
into the she was pretty dope, man. She was into, the gay men's health crisis back in the 80s when people were afraid to even touch that subject. She was a part of, the
Wow,
whole
wow.
downtown Manhattan scene. She was part of the Young Lords with Hispanics in Brooklyn and in Manhattan. She was always a part of, you want to say the revolution, but she really wasn't. She was, but she was down with people who were. And a lot of her friends, major power players in all of that, whether it was Hispanic, black, whatever, when it came to minorities, she was a part of that. And so she passed that on to me. about being open minded, about being more willing to help other people in need because everyone needs help at some time, regardless of
Right.
who you are, where you come from.
Yeah,
She
biggest
showed
struggle.
me,
Yeah,
though,
for sure.
that when you think open minded, nothing could stop you, you know? And
Right.
so because of that, that's how I treated wrestling, you know? Yeah, there was some people who were jerks. You didn't mess with them. You didn't deal with them. You know, the other people, there's some people who are quiet because they need help. Hey, is there anything I could do for you? What do you need? You know, is there anything you need help with at all? Whatever. I'm always, even this weekend I did Titan Championship Wrestling, right? I'm ready for retirement. I'm so beaten up and broken down. I was in the ring with the young guys, showing them a couple of tips and tricks because I love helping. I love doing that for other people, even if they don't need it. You know what I mean? I'm willing
Right.
because if I watch wrestling for my entire life, when I'm out of wrestling, I want to still watch wrestling. I want it to be
Yeah.
good. I don't want it to suck. So if I can help the next generation of
Right.
people that are going
Yeah.
to be on TV, I want them to be good too. You know what I mean? I don't look for, oh, hey, remember that time I hooked you up? Now you got to hook me up. No, I don't care. I've always told other people two things. If, whatever it is that happens for you from this point on after our interaction, if you feel like you got to pay me back, get me into catering. I don't care about wrestling. Just get me into catering, right? And the other thing, when you're in a position where you can help someone younger, bring them up and help them because that's the only way that this business gets good. And it was crazy because, you know, Jersey All Pro, we get into the Hall of Fame, and it was me, Homicide, Moff, and Key at the same time. And Key looked at me after my speech and he said, "You know what's crazy? I never really thought about it, but you really just care about helping other people." And like, I was one of the few, real conversations that we had at that point. It was like, you always say it, you always preach it, you want to help people. And that's what I do. That's what I like doing because my mom, it all starts with her. She made me realize that regardless of what I am, there's always going to be people that like me, always people that hate me. I can't change their minds. You know what I mean? I can only give a good first impression. After that, that's it. You know what I mean? Help the people who need it. And then, just try to make sure that you're not broke.
That's it. That's it, man. Well, I mean, respectfully to Mama Mac, that's a beautiful way to raise your child and to instill
Thank you.
and especially as someone who's lost their mother, yes, let her know how awesome she is while she's
Hmm.
there because
Yeah.
she needs to hear that. And it's trust.
Yes. Yes.
For sure, for sure. Now, just to change up the tempo a little bit, right? You did mention earlier that being part of a tag team, but then there was also a point where you mentioned you were in the middle of a singles run, right? So I wanted to ask, is there a preference? Is there one that you would prefer more than the other? Do you like tag wrestling more? Do you like the singles run? Like, which one is better and why? In your experience.
So, I don't remember the full count because there's a bunch that I, over the years, have forgotten about. But I have won something about 92, 93 titles in 28 years. And out of that 92 or 93, whatever, at least 70 of them were tag titles. And I have about 15 different partners. So I think that would answer which one I like best. But
Gonna,
honestly,
gonna, gonna go on a limb and say, yeah, that kind of pushes us in the direction.
yeah, definitely, definitely. But honestly, had I not gotten into the hit squad and continued, to do the singles thing, I definitely would have gone that way because I love being competitive. I love the fight. Listen, wrestling is a play, a physical play, right? And no matter what happens, I love the whole getting people emotionally involved. I was saying before the interview happened to Eddie how I was watching Queen of the Ring today. And the Mildred Burke story is an amazing story. I mean, I've talked to plenty of people in the past about it. I've even talked to Mae Young about it in one on one and asked. But in the movie, Mildred talks about she wants to just tell the story and she loves telling the story. That's her favorite part. She was skinny, scrawny, whatever. But she loved telling the story and making the people feel emotionally invested. When I feel as though when you do a singles run as a competitor, the ability to tell that story is greater because you don't have to worry about anybody else but the guy that you're wrestling. In a tag match, you have four egos to cater to, and sometimes it's a little difficult, clearly I've been able to master that part.
Yeah.
Um, I try to be a ring general as much as possible. Um, and with that goes the responsibility of remembering what has to go where, what has to do what. And it's always been, that's been the main challenge rather than telling the story. Being what Moff is, he's definitely the emotional guy when it comes to the storytelling part. His facials are always on point. I tell all the students, if you're going to study someone how to do facials and tell a story with your face, watch Moff. He's one of the most expressive people I've ever met in history. And he knows how to get that point across. With me, I'm more of the, all right, we're going to put A, B, C here, and then if anything happens, if we got to put D here and then go to A, go back to B, we'll do that. You know what I mean? But that's what, again, with what we were talking about earlier, that's the chemistry that we have. You can't have two great technical wrestlers as a tag team. It'll be great technical wrestling to a point, but it won't be a great tag team match. One of the reasons why Sabu and Van Dam were so awesome is because they were so different. Sabu was insane. He knew how to wrestle. He was an amateur wrestler. Van Dam was a martial artist who had the charisma. But when you look at them, two different guys came from the same place. They were amazing and totally different guys. So I love the challenge of putting together a tag team match. Although I will admit that sometimes excuse me, my finishes are a little off because I think of things as like, all right, so we're going to finish here. What are we going to do for the next time we get together? So that's what I'm always looking at. I don't want to give everything away because there's always that chance to, if this thing gets super popular with the crowd, we're gonna have to do it again. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so where do we save some so that way the next match we can go even higher? So that's for me where I always think. But I do love the singles. When I think of singles, I think of Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi. I think of my cousin a lot because my cousin's a great wrestler. I love his matches. He's one of my favorites by far. Not just because he's my cousin, but because of the story he likes to tell. Homicide has some great historic matches. I feel though Homicide, as great as he was singles, I always liked him in LAX more than him being Homicide. Because,
That's how
Hernandez.
I remember him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hernandez, oh, he's so underrated as a tag team, specialist. But I love Hernandez. I talk to him all the time. He's one of my favorite people. He's so funny, and it's that character that makes him stand out. And when you're in a tag match, it's hard for that to stand out. But
Yeah.
the both of them did. Homicide got over that he was the violent one. Hernandez got over that he was the Hispanic eighth gorilla, whatever you want to call him, silverback.
Yeah.
But he could do these amazing things. And and then you have people like the Briscoe brothers. I love the Briscoe brothers. They were my boys. They still are, you know what I mean? Like, and it's when you
Right.
watch them, even they were great shooters, but they had dynamic personalities, and so, it's hard sometimes, but if you work at it, you can make it be awesome. Going back to the original question, I have become a tag team specialist because of all the experience that I have, and I love it. But if I could have, I would have been a single star. It wasn't for me. The tag team thing was all about it.
Yeah. Perfectly answered, man.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Oh man.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Like you said, you've won so many championships as a tag team. I mean, it just goes to what you can do as part of a team and calling a match. Now, the other thing I kind of want to know is a man of your stature who stands 5'8", 5'9", weighing at 275. A lot of the same words get tossed around in terms of the style of wrestling that you do, the heavy hitter, the powerhouse, things of that nature. Is that something that you wanted to kind of shy away from because you were as big as you are? Is that something that you leaned into? Did you want to be known as something different? Or is that something you don't even really consider your style of wrestling?
So, again, going back to the childhood, growing up with Key, loving Vader, but I also love Macho Man Randy Savage. Flying elbow drop is one of the greatest moves ever from Macho Man. I loved when, Jushin Thunder Liger was doing the shooting star press. Never saw anything like that before, and having a dance partner as kids like Key, I pushed myself, when we had the blizzard of 96, him living on the army base, they piled all the snow into one big tall mountain, and we were the kids that were like, yeah, let's go wrestle in that. So as I'm standing on top of the pile, I
Absolutely.
do a moonsault because Vader did a moonsault. So like it was insane that, you know, he's like, you just did a perfect moonsault. I said, no, I didn't. He's like, yeah, you did. And I was like, nah. So I did it again. And he was like, you just did it again. I was like, shut up. When we finally get in the ring, I'm
Wow.
like, I played football. I lifted weights. I was benching about 450 max. I was doing like 250 military and like, you know, all these crazy numbers because I was playing football. I'm a lineman. You're supposed to do all this power stuff. And being influenced by Big Van Vader, I'm like, this is pretty dope. But then Bam Bam Bigelow. Bam Bam Bigelow is a big dude doing backflips off the top rope and doing cartwheels. So I was influenced by him. And, you know, when I started wrestling, I didn't want to go do the flips because that was key. That was all him. I was never going to do anything better than him that way. So I started doing a lot of the power stuff. I would do Goldberg was a big influence on me because I was a football player, and his intensity and how he hit things as hard as he could. Like I was like, yes, give me more of this, please. Right. So, but it wasn't until the doghouse opened that we were there all the time. We would literally get there on Monday and sleep in the school until Thursday if we had a show on Friday. We would go to the neighbors that we were cool with, shower at their house, whatever. And in that time, that's where I was practicing stuff. I was telling people at Titan this weekend. At one point, I was practicing the 450, right? Because John Cronus was like about 6'2", about 280, 270. He was hitting a perfect, beautiful moon 450. I knew I could do the moonsault, so I didn't worry too much about it. I actually did the standing moonsault a couple of times during matches, right?
Wow.
So like, but I was coming over the side like Bam Bam Bigelow, so I didn't like it because it wasn't perfect. So I was like, let Key do that, right? So then I started
Right.
practicing the 450. And in practice, I hit the 450 one time, actually twice. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I ever need to hit this because if I do, this is, I'm going to kill my knees, right?
Yeah.
So then
Uh,
I don't know. I remember Amazing Red being at the school and he was showing off the Red Star press, the running shooting star in the ring. I was like, I think if I had like a chair like Sabu, I could do it, right? So we had a practice dummy, and I hit the ropes. I stepped on the dummy as if where the chest would be. Step off, and I'm hitting a shooting star press, running red star press. And I was like, you know what? If I stepped on someone's chest the way I need to do this shooting star, it's attempted murder. Like, there's no
Yeah.
way I'm not going to jail if I try this. So I never tried it. I didn't have to. But but at the same time, I was like, you know what? If I do the top rope splash, I could control myself that I don't kill people.
Yeah.
So I was able to get on the top. I never had fear. Again, always was quick to go. Even with like the Van Terminator, I would just climb up the. It started one day. I just climbed up the ropes, jumped across, hit a drop kick, landed perfect. I was like, wow, okay, that's cool. So I would do it every once in a while at shows until a couple of times that I didn't complete the drop kicks. I was like, I'm good, right? And then like the next big thing was like the Rana off the second rope. I was like, I'll hit it on a couple of big guys, and then next thing I know, I was hitting on everybody. Like if you look at my Beyond Wrestling run with Moff, I hit it on the War Machine. I hit it on Gargano and Champa. I hit it on Dickinson. I hit on everybody that I could whenever I could because it was always cool that a big guy was jumping and hitting a Rana off the second rope. So, but at the same time, a lot of times I would hit that only because I needed one thing to stand out because all the tag team moves, especially with Moff, they were always coming out on point. With tag team moves, we were very creative. We did a lot of things that no one ever did before. Actually, going back to Titan, I saw a tag team called the Brothers Gray. They hit a move where the one guy clotheslined the other guy on the side of the head while he was coming off the ropes. Moff and I used to do that. Moff would whip the guy off the ropes. I would come off like I'm going to hit the pounce, but instead clothesline him to the side of the head. We were calling that the Helen Keller because you would go blind, deaf, and dumb.
Wow.
so when I see that this weekend, as soon as I saw it there, I went to the back. I was like, guys, please tell me where you got that. They were like, no, we just hit it one day. I told them the story. And like, I think we're gonna call that now. I always,
Wow.
like I said, the tag team stuff was never a problem. But the singles stuff, I always wanted to make sure that I did certain things, whether it was giving moves or taking guys' moves. Because if you ask Santana or Ortiz, they always tell everybody I'm made of helium because I go up really light, and I'm always taking their stuff. And they'll be like, "Yo, Steve, why you want to die in the ring?" And I'm like, "Nah, I want to make you guys look good." So um, I mean, I always stuck with the big man stuff, but I was always down to throw in a couple of little things to surprise people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, wow. Like, and it's crazy too because I remember like looking back at a conversation that we had with King. He said one of the advices that he would give like new wrestlers coming into the business, especially big guys. If you're a big
Mhm.
guy, work like a big guy, hit like a big guy. So for you to be brave enough to, adopt, the big guy style, but still be like, yeah, well, Bam Bam Bigelow, Vader, they hit some crazy moves. I'm a shine like they did. You know what I mean? That's pretty awesome, man. I mean, that kudos to you, bro. That's
Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you. It's cool though because like a lot of the moves that back in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s that I was hitting, that I was coming up with, now I pass it along to some of the guys and girls. One of my favorite moves is I would do the Yokozuna sit down, the bonsai drop, and at the same time I'd hold their tag team partner and hit the Rikishi driver. At first, I was
Yeah.
calling it the Kish Yoko combo because I was shouting them out. Those are my two, idols growing up in the game. And then it became, guys were asking me that were on TV on NXT and AEW. I was like, if you're going to use it, you got to have the announcer called the Monster Driver. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So now I have Sammy Chaos. She does it. She's one of the, hottest young females coming up in the game. She's using the Monster Driver whenever she has multiple people matches. You know what I mean? So like, it's cool because my legacy does continue to live. You know what I mean? Regardless if you saw me do it or not, just
right.
saying the word monster driver. All right, that's cool. You know what I mean?
And it's one of those things like if you know, you know kind of situation like the kids be saying these days.
Yes, yes.
Now I have a question for you, right? In regards to your overall career, right? Like you mentioned the tag scene, you mentioned the singles run. Right now, going back in a different direction, is there like a particular opponent or match or opponents, right, in the tag scene that really stands out to you, like most memorable in your mind, or maybe even personally meaningful, right? Like something that you carry with you as a pro wrestler.
Obviously, anytime me and low key, whether it's singles or tag, wrestle each other, I love my cousin. He's one, like I said, he's one of my favorite wrestlers, period. I used to
Hmm.
love when in JP I would commentate his matches because I knew what he was going to do. I don't think he knew what he was going to do at times, but I already knew by the way he was moving. My cousin likes to set things up 4 moves, 5 moves in advance. So he would do
Right.
something and I could see already where he was going to be in 5 moves. And so like that made me feel like as a commentator, because I love commentating as well, not just wrestling, but as a commentator, it made me feel like I was a pro because I could see and like I even when I watch pay-per-views now, you've been watching these guys long enough. You feel like you see the setups, you know what's coming, you know where they're going. And for me, that's like one of the coolest things about being a commentator. If you're smart and you pay attention, you'll be awesome because you can read where everybody's going. But being able to wrestle low key, especially now that like I said, I'm at the end of the tunnel and I could see the light, feel the light on my head. You know what I mean?
Oh, indeed.
Um, it's I watch, and I look back and the matches we were doing and how I hope I don't come off as egotistical saying this, but we changed the game, him and I, because people weren't doing the stuff that we were doing back then, whether it was singles, tag team, heavyweight, light heavyweight, whatever it was, him and I were determined to change everything. And then we met Homicide, and then we met Moff, and the other people that we were in there with, the SAT, Amazing Red, Quiet Storm, Divine, all the brothers at the doghouse, Low Life Louie, Mace, Buffy. I know he's gonna laugh. Even our boy Guapo. That we all had a part because we were at the doghouse. We all had the same mentality. We all wanted to, just take over the world. Then it brings me to the younger generation wrestling. I got fortunate enough to wrestle the Briscoes when they were young, the SAT for many years. I got to wrestle with them. The guys from Special K, I got to wrestle all of them being young. And then as me and Moff make a second run with Beyond Wrestling, we're able to do things with the generation under us who became the Kings. So Chris Hero was somebody. JT Dunn got to get in there with, the Viking Raiders, War Machine, who were the next generation after us in Ring of Honor. I got to wrestle with Private Party, who, did crazy things in AEW. And we had a great match with them. Actually, a great
Yes.
series of matches. We have more than one. But when I look back, everything that we did with Santana and Ortiz from the very first time we wrestled them, that we were in the finals of a tag team tournament for Joel Maximal. And as Moff and Santana were about to lock up for the first time, the lights went out in the building.
Oh wow.
And we took
Man.
that as a sign, like this was so insane that everything just went chaotic. And we had such an amazing match with them. And then Beyond Wrestling starts putting us
Wow.
together with them. And we going crazy at Beyond Wrestling, where we do the tournament for tomorrow finals, with Dickinson and Jaka, who are our boys and their boys, and then Kimberly and Shimron. And we're down to the final two teams, and it's us versus EYFBO. And when we were talking about stuff in the back, never did it before. And this is one of the most magical moments I've ever had in wrestling. All of us, all four teams were in the back before the match, talking a little. We couldn't really call much because we didn't have much time, and it was four teams. So it's going to be chaotic. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we go, and I don't know what happened, but Moff starts making a salsa beat on the wall with his hands, the drums. And then Jaka,
Dun, 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 dun,
yeah,
dun, dun.
yeah. But wait, again, this is where it gets crazy. Jaka starts singing. He starts singing Aguanile.
Oh,
So
I love that song.
we all do. We all do. And I don't know what happened, but the magic just hit so hard right there that it made the match, the flow of the match, how hard we were gonna work, like everything about the match changed right there when we all started getting down to that. And like I said, we're the last two
Wow.
teams. We go so hard for 10 minutes and everyone's just going crazy. And it was one of the few times where I never questioned myself. I never questioned where I belonged. I knew I was a pro wrestler in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being with them, they always made me feel good because I knew that whatever I did, whatever I felt about myself in that moment, I was the king of New York, the king of tag team, the king of hit squad, king of Brooklyn, and I had my boys with me.
Yeah.
And like it was one of those things where, like I said, I never questioned myself at that point ever. I never, at that moment, I knew who I was. And I knew that those were my boys for life. And it was such a magical moment that nobody could ever take away. And it's never going to happen again. No matter where I stand with Moff, no matter where he stands with me, he's my brother. Santana Ortiz, they're my boys, no matter what and what they're going through, what I'm going through, whoever. That moment right there, it just showed to me that everything that I've done and everything that I will done, it's worth it. Because let's face it, wrestling, everybody looks down on wrestling until they fall in love with it. Everybody talks trash about wrestling. They sit there and they say it's fake, it's garbage, it's a story, a soap opera for men, whatever it is, right? But in that moment, for me, it was real. It was as real as you could get. And again,
Absolutely.
I got to make
Absolutely.
I got to make such a huge moment for my life. I went biggest moment for me was going to Japan because that same week, Key, Homicide, Moth, SAT, a bunch of nobodies from Brooklyn were all taking over the world in Japan, right?
Man.
That was a huge
The
moment.
goose. I just got goosebumps.
A huge moment. But that Beyond match, the finals match, being in there, Dickinson and Jaka when they were kids, because I lived in Staten Island, they grew up in Staten Island. They would see me on the
Shaolin.
bus. Yes, they would see me on the bus going to the doghouse, to going to the ferry, and they'd be afraid to approach me. But yo, I think that's Monsta Mack because they knew already. You know what I mean? They were fans.
Yeah.
And then we would talk, and I would always give them advice. And then, same thing with Santana Ortiz. I would always see them, and I knew them, and But then that moment, we're all men going to war, and just like you see how emotional it gets me. You know what I mean? Like that's just
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
big of a moment it is for me, man.
Oh,
So
man.
that's
Thank
the
you for
match.
sharing that, man.
I'll send it. Actually, I'll send that to
How,
you guys. I know I said I was going to send some before. I just got a little caught up with stuff, but
All
I'll
good.
Nah,
send some
nah,
stuff.
you're good, man. You're good. The question there is like, how can you not be romantic about wrestling when you hear a story like that, and it brings an athlete and a man of your stature to tears. I mean, that's just, if that doesn't show people just how much wrestling is loved and adored by not only the fans but the people who do it. I mean, it's a testament to you and your love for your sport, man. And I can't begin to
I love
thank you
wrestling.
so much for the time that you've given us today, man. It's crazy. Like I know Eddie and I are sitting back here just kind of in awe of a lot of what you've said and
Yeah.
just try to piece it all together. I don't know, but it's absolutely fantastic. Like the
Thank you.
journey that you've
Thank
been
you.
on, that you've seen, it's crazy, man. And I want to say thank you, because like you're right, people do look down on
Thank
wrestling and
you.
stuff like that. So when we have the ability to have someone of your stature and knowledge to come and educate people who need to hear this side of the story, I think it's beautiful. And thank you so much, Monster. Like, I am truly humbled by the last hour and change. I cannot thank you enough for not only your time but just blessing us with every word that you said.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having me. I mean, this is the thing. Like, wrestlers, no matter what, the majority, because there's some people that get into it for fame, right? But on the whole, wrestlers are fans first, no matter what. They
Right.
saw something that they loved, and they saw something that they were like, man, I would love to do this, you know? And sometimes, wrestlers, they don't have the skill to make it as a wrestler. So they become a referee or they become a manager, but they still love it no matter what, and sometimes there's people who, they don't even know that they love it until they have that moment that it just bam punches them in the face and like, damn, I love this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, one of the things I tell the guys is that, you always have to keep in mind two things. The first is that at any given moment, it could all be taken away from you. I've seen wrestlers die in the ring, legit. Rest in peace, all the brothers and sisters who passed away. I recently was there as Vince Steele passed away, and that was someone that it hurt hard because I'd known him since he was a teenager, and he was in my hands as he took his last breaths, and I'm still trying to process that as we go, right?
Wow.
But that also puts into perspective what I'm about to say. It could always be taken away. Never take it for granted. If you love it, give it your all. Don't go halfway because you're never going to get what you need out of it. And the other thing is that when you do, you need to realize that there's something like 9 billion people in the world, right? Out of that 9 billion people, you have to remember that maybe a million at most around the entire world can honestly tell you what it feels like to stand on the ropes and hear a crowd boo you or cheer you and listen to whatever you have to say with bated breath and feel whatever passion and emotion you have for it, and don't ever take that for granted because again, it could all be taken away, but you have to respect that people are willing to go visit a show, spend their money, right, regardless of what they're going through, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. They're there to pay their money to watch wrestling, and if they want to see you or the person you're wrestling or the other matches, you have to respect that that's what they came to do, spend their time with you. So give them the best show possible. Because otherwise, when it comes time that they have their next generation or whoever it is that they pass on the knowledge and their love of wrestling for, they're not going to talk about how great wrestling was to them. What we're doing, we're all spending that time, this last hour and change, talking about how much we love wrestling because
Yeah.
it's such a great, phenomenal thing to be a part of. Whether you're talking about it, watching it, listening to it, wrestling, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're a part of it, it's one of the best things in the world, and I'm so glad and grateful that for everybody that I've met on my journey and that's been a part of this path for me to become a pro wrestler. I always tell my dad, because my dad and I, we don't have the greatest relationship, but I always tell him one of the coolest things, he doubted me and I became the most famous person with my last name in the history of the world. You know what I mean? Because of my love for pro wrestling was bigger than hearing any negative thoughts or anything to keep me from being that big. you know. And I still feel like a schmuck from Brooklyn, but that's just me. That's how I am.
That
I'll
is
always be
normal.
that
That's
way.
normal.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the fact that there's all of that going on, you know what I mean? Like that's it just amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Monster, let me just say, man, like you ended that on such an incredible note. I mean, we are so
I
truly,
don't know how
truly
you could end it
grateful to
better.
you not only talk to someone like you, that caliber of like a pro wrestler, but also, on the Latino point, you know what I mean? Because we welcome all wrestlers to come here and tell their stories. But como somos primos for life, we got a little bit of that soft spot for the Latino part, and we want to hear these stories, and we want the world to hear all these stories. And the fact that you were able to spend this time with us to share that with the world, like verge of tears, getting goosebumps, laughing, man. I honestly hope that you not only felt so loved and welcome with us, but feel comfortable enough to truly come back and just kick it with us again, because this was by far one of the
Whenever
best
you want,
time.
whenever you
Yeah,
want, when you
please,
are,
man.
the door is open. The door is open, and thank you once again, because representation truly does matter. And you were out there doing it for us and for our people. And thank you very much.
Same.
And now, Monster, please take this moment to let our listeners know where, when, how, all the information. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I still run around as the general manager for Titan Championship Wrestling. So if you see Titan Championship Wrestling in the Jersey area, always be at every show pretty much.
Nice.
And I'm sure my last match will be with them at some point, whether it's this year or early next year. Part of me keeps wanting to try to push it to 30, but I don't know if I want to. Like my body's definitely, I need rest. I'm definitely feeling it at times. But
Yeah, you
the
gotta
love.
listen to your body. Listen to your body.
Yes, yes. But the love will always tell me, you wanna. So,
Yeah.
you know. As far as social media though, pretty much everything is at Steve Mack DHS. STEVEMACK, D like David, H is in Harry, S is in Steve. That's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. And some of the other platforms like Blue Sky as well. And TikTok, even though I'm hardly on some of those things, but I still every once in a while. And if anybody reaches out to me, I'll always talk. You know what I mean? I have
Yeah.
no problem reaching out and answering anything. And that's pretty much it. If you see me out in the streets, shout me out.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Well, Monster, real quick, I do want to say one thing. I mean, I live in
Yes.
Jersey now, so whenever you do have that retirement match, that last match, let me know. Send me an Instagram, send me whatever, because I would love to be there to support you in that last one, being that I'm gonna be in Jersey. So please let me know, brother. Please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I definitely will. I've always said I don't want to be the one to say I'm going to have a retirement match because it's pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Terry Funk, we
Right.
all love Terry Funk, but how many times did Terry Funk retire? You know what I mean? So, um, I I always say I'm just gonna go quiet into the sunset because, like I said, for me, I'm just a short, fat kid from Brooklyn. No matter what, in my heart, that's what I'll always be. And I never saw myself as anything super special, just cool enough. You know what I mean? Not special, cool. That's how I saw myself. So, and I treat how I would go out the same way because I want it to be something cool. Like just know though, if you see something where like the hit squad's going to team up, chances are that's probably going to be your hint that that's going to be my last one. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but I definitely will reach out and let
I
everybody,
see
and
you.
trust
I
me,
see
I'm
you.
definitely down. I felt the love. Yep, I felt the love from you guys, and I definitely want to do something else, even if it's reviewing something like SummerSlam or whatever. I'm down with you
There
guys.
you
You know what I
go.
mean? Just let me know.
Yeah.
Still
Please,
a big
please,
fan.
please
Trust me.
join us. You let us
Perspective.
know,
So
brother.
Yes, yes, I'm down. I'm so down.
entonces, Senor Monster Mac, again, sir, thank you so much for the time, for the privilege. And this was fantastic, man. And we can't wait to chop this up and put it up so the world could see. So thank
Thank
you.
you.
Muchas
Thank you.
gracias for your story, senor. For real.
Gracias,
Gracias,
hermanos.
Monster.
Thank you.
Gracias. Muchísimas
Yeah.
gracias. A ti.
We'll catch you later, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, man.
All right.
Oh man, that was awesome, bro.
Wow.
What a story, man.
Wow. Wow.
What a story.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that at all. Like
No.
that went
But we never
so
do, man.
many different ways and so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You just always forget about how interesting the story of any human being can be, man. It's absolutely crazy and fantastic. And what a nice guy. Oh my God, what a sweetheart. What a nice dude.
I know. I didn't want to say that, right? Because I'm
Man.
like, it's Monster Mack, right? But I was like, what a teddy bear, man. What a good guy.
Yo, man, like, the nicest of dudes, man. Like, so cool.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I'm very happy with that. And what a story. The highs, the lows, the emotion, man. Goosebumps. I had goosebumps, bro.
Oh man, that end there, man. Oof, I was not expecting that. So, oh, did it?
Yeah. I know. But just final thoughts. Like that was fantastic. I look forward to working with him at a later point. He wants to come on for SummerSlam. That would be pretty awesome to get a pros, point of view. So
whenever he reaches out and says he would like to come back, yes. Let's just make sure that door is always open.
Yeah, absolutely. Bueno, Primo, if you got nothing else to say, ya tú sabes.
I mean, I think we've said enough in the past hour and change, so I'm gonna do what we normally do and thank everybody for giving us their time. Special thank you again to Monsta for just a wonderful evening night of an interview. Fantastic. And please look for him, YouTube him, Facebook, whatever, anything along those lines. Try and find matches. He's just a hell of a guy. So with that being said, we thank everyone who's always here with us. We love you guys. We can't do this without you. We will see you when we see you.
We will see you when we see you. Take care, everybody.